The Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship has once again returned to the birthplace of champions. Just like round one, it features a seemingly bottomless collection of talent filling the grid, but unlike the first round at the same location, a champion has already been crowned as Turcotte Performance Suzuki rider Sebastien Tremblay clinched the Economy Lube Tire Pro Sport Bike division at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park just a few short weeks ago. Today, pride is on the line as Tremblay looks to punctuate his exceptional season. Visor down, revs high, let's go racing in Shannonville. Marshall Ferguson alongside Colin Fraser as we are here at Shannonville Motorsport Park. It is round number 6, the final round of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship season. And in the Economy Lube Tire Pro Sport Bike division, we know who our champion is. It is the Turcotte Performance Suzuki of Sebastien Tremblay, but there are tons and tons of talented riders in this field. And going into today's race, as we've seen so often this season, Colin, there are variable conditions.
Yeah, we've had a miserable morning of rain, some drama there, and we're expecting at least a partially wet track, which of course is what we had on Saturday 3 weeks ago at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. So it's a very, very unpredictable situation, very stressful for the riders trying to gamble on their tire choices and on a circuit that they know is going to be tough in terms of traction.
There is Trevor Daly, the one-speed Suzuki, still nursing some broken bones in that left hand from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
And this weekend has been a tough one. Trevor's been on the ground with the Superbike, so he did not qualify very well in our sport bike. As we look at the grid, there's Sebastien Tremblay, our new champ on pole. What a shock, about a second faster than he's gone previously.
John Lang, who's been battling with him throughout the season, alongside Alex Michel, Andrew Van Winkle, as well as there you see Trevor Daly sitting back in the middle of row number 3.
And got to mention Dylan Bauer. This is his debut at Shannonville Motorsport Park. A solid effort for the guy who spends most of his time at Grand Bend. Mackenzie Wheel penalized because he left the grid after qualifying prior to release.
As we go around Shannonville Motorsport Park, the long layout.
Yeah, this is the version that includes every single corner that's available on the racetrack. So we count 14 or 15. Now, our map has 14. In the old days, it was 15. But the inside portion has a lot of left-handers all in a row, and that is bad news for Trevor Daly, who has a bad left hand.
As we can see the damp conditions here, they're getting set to make their way towards the grid as we head down to our Bridgestone pit reporter, Sarah Said.
Thanks, Marshall. Sebastien Tremblay already clinched the Economy Lube Pro Sport Bike title this season in the last round, despite a season worst finish at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Starting from 11th on a drying track, Tremblay dove into the pits at the end of the warm-up lap and switched to slick tires, which didn't pay off as he ultimately finished 11th when the race was red flag for nearby lightning. However, his Suzuki counterparts saved his championship bid as Trevor Daly won his second race of the campaign. That would give Tremblay a 59-point lead with just 54 points remaining at Shannonville, handing him the second title of his career and first for Turcotte Performance Suzuki. Tremblay secured pole position in qualifying here at Shannonville and says that he feels good and is now interested in pursuing CSBK win and lap records. He also says he's already thinking about next year as this season helped him gain confidence and more knowledge on the tracks. Back to you.
Thank you, Sarah. As we turn our attention towards the Apex Cycle starting lights powered by Honda, Sebastien Tremblay puts down the clear visor here with damp conditions and gets set to go. They are away. We are full throttle at Shannonville Motorsport Park. Great start from Dylan Bauer on the outside, but it's Maverick Sear into first as nearly contact between Tremblay and that Kawasaki. Was that Alex Michel near the front?
Yeah, it was. Michel making a great start after qualifying so well. Tremblay fading back, and John Lang had a terrible start. So two of our top 3 are struggling, but the 2 best Ducatis are not struggling at all. Of course, theoretically, the torque of the twins is an advantage in these conditions, but it is really slippery.
And the real advantage this year, anytime it's rained here in the Economy Lube Tire Pro Sport Bike division, has been Trevor Daly in the wet as John Lang makes a move here down the inside, and Daly is up near the front right now. You see him around the outside of Elliott Vieira into second spot. Now eyes down Maverick Sear.
So third row of the grid, 8th position, bad left hand. You can see him sliding going into 5 there. Now we see a good shot of Daly looking backwards from Sear's Ducati V-Twin. So these are the Gen 2 ruled bikes, the Ducati 955, the GSXR 750. Remember this bike that Daly's on, it was built to run at Daytona in the Bridgestone supported effort. Ben Young was the top guy on one of these bikes. His bike won at the opener. Now Daly's trying to win yet again and yet again in the rain.
He has been so successful and so aggressive in the rain. Even during the morning warm-up today, Colin, he was absolutely splashing through huge puddles as he looks around the outside, gets stood up, but stays on the throttle. Elbows out here early on in the damp conditions, and Trevor Daly takes first spot.
Whoa, big moment by Daly again there. And what happened, and maybe we'll see this in the replay, Daly is impatient because he's got a good sense of the traction, which is impressive. Remember, this is our first racing lap, so really you don't know what you're getting into. You would have seen the puddles on the warm-up, but you don't push all out on the warm-up. This is your first full tilt lap, and probably a good thing for Daly to lead and let Sear calm down a bit.
To put together a Trevor Daly wet weather tank slapper compilation from this year, Colin. He has been close so many times and somehow able to stay on the bike, and for now he will lead as they complete lap number 1.
Yeah, and that's a solid lead, and remember he was 8th 1 lap ago coming off the grid, so that is an amazing effort. And you look at that, you can barely get a 2-shot of our leaders, and at this point Sear has to be wondering, is it worth trying to engage with Daly, because he's just been so good in these conditions. And you know, normally Trevor's so aggressive, but he has really smoothed out, and this, I think, of all the wet races we've had this year, this is the worst one. This is the most slippery. So now we're on board looking backwards from leader Sear, and here Daly's just shopping, trying to figure out the traction, and he winds up in kind of a bad spot. Sear would have no idea that he's there and probably doesn't think there's enough traction to try this move, and Daly just has to yield the spots. Sear still doesn't know he's there, and at this point Daly must just keep coming, right? He's got the drive. Also note Sear's got those gigantic knee sliders that kind of encourage you not to lean over too far when it's wet, but the guy who has the feel for how far to lean over is definitely Trevor Daly.
It is the 1-speed Suzuki of Trevor Daly in first here at Shannonville. Portions of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship are brought to you in part by Pace Law Firm's Fallen Rider Support Team, Joe Rocket, and EBC Brakes and Clutches. Closed captioning for the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship is brought to you in part by Apex Cycle, BS Battery, MotorcycleCourse.com, and Revs for Rhett. Welcome back. Working lap number 2 of this race at Shannonville Motorsport Park. Trevor Daly out in front by nearly 6 seconds at this point, taking a huge chunk of time out with every single corner in the wet, Colin.
And we're looking at Vieira on the Ducati in 3rd. He has Van Winkle on the Suzuki 600 in 4th, and John Lang on the Kawasaki 636 right behind him. But it looks like these guys are being very, very careful. It's because they are. The track is so slippery. So what's remarkable is that Daly has pulled out 6 seconds on a track that's like glass, and everybody is just struggling not to have a moment. They know if you start pushing it all, look at Lang starting to push, but if you start riding like that, it's very, very risky. And of course, right there, Van Winkle has no clue that Lang's that close.
As John Lang nearly threw it into the corner, and you talk about Trevor Daly and his ability to gap the competition right now, whether it be Vieira, Maverick Sear, Van Winkle, Lang, any of the rest. In that last lap, on lap number 2, Daly ran a 2:04, and he is the only person to be running sub 2:07 at this point.
And let's talk about Sebastien Tremblay, our reigning champion. Look at that, Lang trying on Vieira, so that's an important move there for the championship, because Lang is trying to hold on to 2nd overall. He and Sear are in a pretty good battle, and look at that, and I think that's Van Winkle. So I mixed them up. So that's Van Winkle in front already, and Lang just made the move, and Vieira definitely is not comfortable in these conditions on the Ducati.
Yeah, struggling right now as he drops down to 5th position. Sebastien Tremblay, our champion this season, already crowned, down in 8th spot right now as we get a replay and a look here at Andrew Van Winkle down the inside of Vieira.
Yeah, and after I make that speech about how you can't go offline and it's so slippery, it's very impressive that Van Winkle, with very little time on Shannonville, particularly on the rain, making a move like that on 2 very strong riders. And here you see Lang completing his pass on Vieira, and right now Vieira just doesn't look like he has a lot of fight in him. I think he's uncomfortable and probably decided discretion is the better part of valor in these conditions.
Perhaps wisely so, as now in behind Vieira is Alex Michel as well as Philippe de Gama Blanchette, but it is out in front Andrew Van Winkle, who's trying to catch up to the other Ducati on this grid. Maverick Sear sitting in second, and Trevor Daly continuing to push the pace out in front.
Yeah, Lang seems to be picking up his pace, getting a little more comfortable in the conditions. And of course, at this point, where most of the spray has dissipated, you can start actually following the wheel tracks of the guy in front of you. Now, this depends on you liking the lines he's picked, because sometimes you don't want to ride where he's riding. But the puddle situation doesn't seem to be too bad. You can see the spray isn't bad at all, but this track is really slippery.
But a 4-second gap here at the start-finish straight between Andrew Van Winkle that you see up ahead of John Lang as he continues to try and slow down that Kawasaki, the Vast Performance Kawasaki, into the corner, and does get it slowed down enough. And Van Winkle trying to keep that thing upright as well in the wet.
Yeah, so Van Winkle on the Suzuki 600, Lang on the Kawasaki 636. These are the Gen 1 bikes. Most of the other bikes around them are from the new version of the rules for sport bike for our middleweight division, which restricts weight and limits horsepower to 125 on the Dyno Jet dyno.
John Lang with a victory earlier this season out in Edmonton at Rad Torque Raceway, as the Westerner making his way into the National Series, highly competitive all year long and trying to push the pace and catch his way up to Van Winkle and maybe another step onto the podium here at Shannonville.
Everybody on basically identical grooved Bridgestone called turbine tires. They're really good for moving the water as the track starts to dry. Of course, that's going to be tough on the tires, but unfortunately this year everybody's had a lot of time to get used to these Bridgestone rain tires, and most of the riders are quite comfortable on them. But ironically, Seb Tremblay just hasn't worked out well so far.
Arguably the most comfortable rider in the wet, Trevor Daly. He continues to lead, but John Lang trying to hunt him down here at Shannonville. Welcome back to Shannonville Motorsport Park as Trevor Daly continues to lead out in front. The gap between him and Maverick Sear at this point, 11 seconds, but Sear and Andrew Van Winkle in second and third. They just laid down a 2:05, so some more competitive times as they get set. Unfortunately, Philippe de Gama Blanchette fighting for 6th or 7th in the championship. He crashed his way on the final couple corners here. Let's go down to our Bridgestone pit reporter, Sarah Sett.
All right, Phil, you're getting out of the race early today. Can you tell us a bit about what happened?
Yeah, it's really slick out there. I wasn't expecting to lose it there. Felt like the grip was decent. I had a little moment at the hairpin earlier. Just, yeah, super disappointing because Mosport wasn't great to us either. And, I ran back to the bike and, if the shifter wasn't broken, I think I would have continued and I probably could have salvaged some points. But it's how it goes. It's racing and you move on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, Sarah was talking to Phil, an interesting battle between Tremblay and Vieira, and of course usually this interesting battle involves first place, but they're much further back on our slippery track. Here we go on board with Tremblay, and he's shopping for the pass. He's tightening up his line in turn 2 and trying to get under Vieira, and as I mentioned, Vieira just doesn't seem to have a lot of fight in him today. He seems to be fairly careful, and getting passed by Seb Tremblay isn't going to improve his quality of the day.
Sebastian Tremblay continuing to try and fight his way up. Next up is Alex Michel straight in front of him as we saw Michel going side by side off the top of this race with Andrew Van Winkle, and now it looks like he might have to defend this spot. 5th in this race from Sebastian Tremblay is down the inside, and almost in slow motion they do get it slowed down and turn up towards the back straightaway. So in the hairpin, it's Tremblay moving into 5th.
Yeah, the two Team Canada Daytona Bridgestone teammates really probably are wishing it was a sunny day in Florida right now, because it would be a lot more fun than this.
As John Lang just up the road, you see there in 4th position, Andrew Van Winkle in 3rd. Sear holds on to 2nd, and Trevor Daly continuing to push out in front, leading this race, but Tremblay trying to cement his championship with a successful final weekend here at Shannonville.
Yeah, and Tremblay, who faded as far back as 8th, is not far behind Lang right now, so this is getting interesting. And we discussed the fact that Tremblay hasn't been all that comfortable in the rain, and in theory the GSXR 750 should be a little bit better, more torquey and whatnot, and can hold the gear longer, but he looks like he's getting comfortable with those rain tires.
Lap number 7 of 12 here as we are beyond the halfway point, and on lap 6 it was a 2:06 for Sebastian Tremblay, so alongside some of those passes, certainly starting to chop some time off his laps.
Yeah, we had a good shot of Lang there, who is Mr. Smooth, and these conditions demand that kind of riding. We've at Edmonton we were talking about how Lang looked so much like Ben Young, who's our Superbike top gun these days, their riding styles are very similar, and Tremblay gets thrown into that comparison too. But again, Tremblay not that keen on the rain.
You can see those tremendous shots from our CSBK crew of the mist and the fog hanging in the distance on those trees in and around Shannonville Motorsport Park. It gives you a good sense for just how damp this track is right now.
Yeah, the problem is it's the wind hasn't really come up, so the track's not drying that fast, and it's a weird situation where we've been running, there's a nice move by Tremblay. We've been running in these circumstances, and the lap times really aren't picking up. The track continues to be quite slippery. You can see a little bit of spray in this section, so yeah, kind of status quo, which is unusual unless it's raining.
Tremblay, tremendous, setting up that move on John Lang as he's kind of backed Lang up into Alex Michel right now as well. We get a look at the replay here, Cole.
Yeah, so here's Lang leading. He's a little bit wide looking for puddles. That works out just fine in this section, which is quite technical, all these left-handers in a row. But Tremblay at this point, he's made a decision. He's committed to the inside. And the great thing compared to other passes we've seen here is Tremblay makes the move solidly. Lang knows he's there, so there's no collision. We've had some bumping and pushing through this section so far this weekend.
The Turcotte Performance Suzuki of Sebastian Tremblay on the move here at Shannonville Motorsport Park. Portions of the Bridgestone Canadian Superbike Championship are brought to you in part by Pace Law Firm's Fallen Riders Support Team, Joe Rocket, and EBC Brakes and Clutches. Welcome back to Shannonville Motorsport Park. Trevor Daly continues to lead on the one-speed Suzuki from Maverick Sear, Andrew Van Winkle, and in fourth ahead of John Lang, it is Sebastian Tremblay on that Turcotte Performance Suzuki, the Gen 2 GSXR 750, and the detailed ins and outs, well, Seb knows them better than anyone.
Last year we struggled. The internal gearing of the 750 is way different than the 600, so it really played with out bike handles and work. So we had to change a lot of the geometry and learn how to basically make the bike go fast. It's yes, it does have a little bit more torque. The gearing are different, but RPM is a little bit lower as well, so you gotta lengthen the gear. So it's kind of messing up with how we're used to riding a 600. So it was kind of, I won't say it's difficult, but it was a learning experience for us. We were lucky enough to be able to use MotorSpec, so now I can look at what numbers are on MotorSpec and see how they feel, and I can adjust the bike accordingly.
Seb talking about how he uses his laptop computer to tune the performance of that Suzuki. He was talking about the gearing. Important to remember, we're not talking about the front and rear sprockets. We're talking about the internal ratios of the gears inside the engine in the transmission.
Walked past that laptop at the Daytona 200 after a practice. There were all sorts of colorful lines on Sebastian Tremblay's computer, giving him as much information to work with as possible, and he's absolutely gotten it up to speed in a way that I'm sure he believed he would at the start of the year, as we see the gap starting to tighten down between Tremblay and John Lang. And Lang was fighting for the championship against Tremblay right at the very top of the standings all season long. Colin, do you think he wants to send a little message here in the final couple of laps that he still got it?
Well, I think sometimes Lang is annoyed that he's not more in the conversation with who should be winning, and he at one point was putting a pretty big push on when Tremblay was hurt in Edmonton. Lang was definitely making hay while the sun shines. The sun has not been shining much lately, and Lang, I think, absolutely has a point to prove, and he does not want to finish behind Seb Tremblay, whether it's first or second or 9th and 20th.
Right now, just 2/10 back from Sebastian Tremblay as they're working their way through lap number 11 of 12. Again, Trevor Daly leading out in front with a huge gap, 17 seconds, the advantage over Maverick Sear right now.
Fun to watch somebody go shopping on Seb Tremblay, and that's what we've got right now. It is not Elliot Vera. He's a little further back, but Lang has not given up the good fight here. You can see him trying to stay as far behind the screen and try and keep his visor clean. At this point in the race, you're looking through a lot of muck.
As you can tell, the dominance of Daly today, the final lap has already begun as our racers Tremblay and Lang in 4th and 5th make their way down the back straight. So huge advantage out in front, but Tremblay trying to hold on to this 4th position as they head into Allen's corner.
Both of these riders super smooth. Lang deep on the brakes. That's the hardest braking we've seen so far.
Side by side they go. Lang looks around the outside. Tremblay gets back on the throttle, and now they'll drag race down the front straight to begin their final lap.
And that was your backwards completion principle, and I don't know if anything was learned there other than I guess we're going to start taking some much bigger chances than anyone has really taken throughout this race.
We get a look at it here on board with John Lang. We see just how deep he did go in the brakes.
Yeah, nice move here, and he just stays on the throttle, and Seb, I'm sure, was quite surprised. Now, got to mention that this is not a threat, right? Tremblay's on the inside. Lang was not going to harm his ability for Tremblay to complete the corner, but now Lang ducks back under and tries to make something happen, and I don't think we're done with these two yet as we go back to our leader, Daly.
Yeah, dueling 207s on that last lap between Lang and Tremblay, but Trevor Daly out in front, nobody in sight. He backed out of it a little bit on lap number 11, but looking to finish in style as he peeks over his shoulder and goes and finds some puddles for those wet tires.
Yeah, he had a good look at who's behind, and there you can see our shot from the end of the back straight. There is nobody anywhere nearby. Sear is so far back, whole length of the back straight.
Dominance from Trevor Daly anytime the wet has reared its ugly head so far this season. And in the final round of the Bridgestone CSBK here at Shannonville Motorsport Park, he looks to punctuate it once again. The number 166 through turn number 13, looks over his left shoulder, sees nobody there, and on turn number 14, he will gently roll it through in front of friends and family to the victory. Trevor Daly wins at Shannonville.
It took him almost a decade to win his second sport bike class race. This time, it's just a couple of weeks to win his fourth.
An incredible effort as now we go back to the Tremblay and John Lang battle as they are side by side at the looks like end of the back straight and weaving their way towards Allen's corner as it looks like Lang stays in the throttle a little bit longer. Tremblay sits it straight up. There's Marco Souza, back marker, and Lang dives down the inside, goes through. Can Tremblay make his way back around the outside?
Notice Tremblay hasn't glanced over, but he's really wide.
As they carry it all the way back to the start-finish straight, John Lang takes the spot.
Yeah, that must have been at least a foot or two.
Unbelievable battle between these two. And looking at each other, shaking their heads that they had to push that hard. But Trevor Daly, the winner, out in front with great racing in the back of the pack.
Yeah, and we weren't expecting that kind of action. You got to throw it to Lang and Tremblay. You normally don't have to ride that hard to win.
Alex Michel comes home in 6th spot. A great effort for him on the Kawasaki ZX6R. Elliot Vieira in 7th. Dylan Bauer in 8th spot. And Marco Souza you saw there at the end in 9th. Mackenzie Wheel did not finish low side at the end of the back straight. Let's go down to our winner, Trevor Daly.
Congratulations on the win, Trevor. How does it feel to get that #1 spot despite also dealing with an injury?
Yeah, you know, it has been the toughest or the easiest of weeks so far. It's been a little bit tough yesterday in qualifying too, which is kind of why I started a little bit further back. But, you know, I was lucky with the rain, and, you know, my Suzuki GSX-R 750 has been awesome in the rain, same as the last event at Mosport. And, you know, kind of was able to push through it and bring it home.
Trevor Daly gets the victory, his 3rd of the season, as John Lang, despite the great finish against Sebastian Tremblay, falls in the championship standings. Maverick Sear now sitting in 2nd.
Got to mention Daly has those 3 wins, but he didn't contest every round. We look at the manufacturer's title, and those points from Daly certainly help. And what an impressive effort by Suzuki in 2024 with the Gen 2 rules.
Another great race by Trevor Daly in the wet, but officially now crowned as the Economy Lube and Tire Pro Sport Bike Division champion, Sebastian Tremblay at the top step with Daly.